There cannot be critical advancement without except there first be a revolution within. On this final segment, Olakunle Soriyan makes a clarion call for an insurrection, not an armed revolution against a political system, but a mental and attitudinal revolt against the status quo and against the prejudices that threaten the expression of our very potential in today's fast-paced world of change. Join us now as Olakunle Soriyan unveils guerrilla tactics for surviving these times.
A number of years ago, a particular African nation was involved in a civil war. I observed and it was reported that the nation in question, in the midst of this chaotic situation, never suffered a power cut. So I concluded, if a nation at war did not suffer a power cut, then Nigeria, which appears relatively at peace, is actually engaged in a more subtle but deadlier war. Because with our peace, we have perpetual power cuts. For you and I living in times such as these, it is imperative we understand that we are in a war. We are in a war against a great many of the norms we have allowed to pass for too long. We are at war against the limitations posed by infrastructural deficiencies and retrogressive policies. We are at war against prejudices and paradigms, comfort, convenience, and the status quo. If we must win this war to maximize our potential and be all we can possibly be vis-a-vis global standards, then we cannot afford to go with the majority. I hear that 85% of the time, the majority is either going the wrong way or playing the sitting dog. At no point in history has the majority ever provoked change. Change has always been the prerogative of a few good rebels. Rebels like Martin Luther, who went against one of the strongest institutions of his time to spark off what we know today as the Protestant Reformation. Rebels like Mahatma Gandhi, whose unique form of civil disobedience, Satyagraha, redefined the word revolution. Rebels like Martin Luther King Jr., who took responsibility for the pain of the majority and kicked off one of the greatest and most successful movements of history. Rebels like Nelson Mandela, who laid down his life to defeat the status quo. Rebels like the Wright brothers, who kicked against man's contentment with walking, driving, and seafaring by daring to say man can indeed fly and going ahead to invent the airplane. Nigeria needs a few good rebels. Africa needs a few good rebels. Students and working class professionals who understand the urgency of the moment, who have a good idea of the odds against them, who have a clear desire to win and maximize their potential. Times like these call for guerrilla tactics. I chose this analogy because I understand well that for change to occur, a small group of insurgents must arise to lead it. And these will be individuals who will utilize available resources in unique ways to foster key advancement. Guerrillas are small bands of rebels who use unconventional tactics to combat more formal and larger armies. Guerrillas are people who understand that the greatest threat to what can be is the seeming peace and comfort of what already is. Maybe this whole idea of endangered species is all exaggerated rhetoric to sell a couple of CDs. Maybe it's not as bad as it seems. Maybe things are okay after all. At most, I will strive for a 2-1, graduate, get a good paying job and settle down to life. All this can be said. Or maybe you already have a good paying job and you are only in your mid-30s or in your early 30s. You earn a good salary, you live in a good apartment, you drive a good car, can travel abroad for summer with your kids and afford anything you need. Great. That's fantastic, really. But I know that we only need to employ the right parameters in our appraisals to realize that not too many of us can lay claim to true success, because true success can never be measured by what we have achieved. True success can only be measured by what we have achieved compared to what we could have achieved given the true value of our potential. The home video industry, Nollywood, is a money spinner, isn't it? Despite its money-making status, you and I know that some of the most mediocre movies in the world in content and packaging are produced and sold by Nollywood. But the industry sure has incredible potential. It possesses genuine talent and a robust market, but unfortunately, it has the wrong benchmarks. We only need to compare an average Hollywood movie shot in the 80s to a today Nollywood blockbuster to understand the depth of mediocrity the industry operates in. But the industry is a money spinner, so why bother pump in more money and of course effort to produce something as excellent as the last Oscar-winning movie from Hollywood? Well, mediocrity has a lifespan. If Nollywood can be excellent in content quality, it can add amazing contribution to our GDP. But Nollywood, like over 80% of our industries, are endangered. The times we live in and the years ahead of us will demand for excellence as defined by global standards. The point I need to emphasize is that the greatest threat to what can be in the potential is what already is in the actual. Every visionary understands this. The greatest threat to our individual and collective excellence is for us to keep judging our performance in local context. Whichever way, the world is globalizing and closing in on us very fast. Soon, there will be absolutely no place to hide. We are either going to perform at the level excellence demands we do, or be irrelevant and extinct. The odds, however, are against us. We are outnumbered and under-resourced. The only credible way out is by employing guerrilla tactics. Guerrilla tactics requires high-level intelligence. No credible war can be waged without a thorough understanding of the situation on the ground and what one is truly up against. First of all, it is imperative we understand what the threats are, and in other words, what makes us endangered. Second, it is also imperative we recognize, understand, prepare, and be willing to checkmate the enemy. Why are we endangered? And how do we survive? So number one intelligence probe is, are we truly endangered? What makes us endangered species? I'll answer that in two simple sentences. We are endangered because the resources, knowledge, skill, infrastructure, and access to key technology, resources needed to survive in today's 21st century world, are chronically deficient. Two, the people globalization is compelling us to compete with are years ahead of us in knowledge, in skill, in infrastructure, and access to key technology. The Singaporean Prime Minister demonstrated a keen awareness of the times we live in when he said, and I quote, "Globalization will force nations to reallocate resources, restructure their economies, and reorient their societies for the future." Singaporeans accept this as a given. We are remaking ourselves into a key node in the global knowledge network, securing our place under the sun. Wow, how secure is our place under the sun when we graduate one of the least amounts of students in science and engineering the world over? When our schools lack infrastructure and our lecturers got into the profession by default, when strikes skew up our academic calendars and our curricula cannot in the least bit measure up to what obtains in more developed nations, how can we secure our place under the sun when we cannot clearly articulate our core competence and when what we studied in school has little or no bearing on what we will practice when we get out there into the workplace? When all our corporations play second fiddle on the global scene and we lack the adequate training to place us at par with our counterparts in the same profession abroad, how can we really, in the words of the Singaporean Prime Minister, secure our place under the sun? This calls for guerrilla tactics. Here's our second intelligence probe. Why are we endangered? Who is the enemy? How do we confront and checkmate him? According to the Asian philosopher Pogo, and I quote, "We have discovered the enemy and there is us," unquote. The first enemy we must confront is the enemy within. This demands a high level of self-awareness. Strategic guerrilla warfare demands that we know the mindsets or blind spots that have the potential to limit us. There is no personal flaw in my personal character I do not have a clear idea of and a feasible plan to deal with. Every successful revolution is founded on the strength of character of the guerrillas themselves. What I have concluded over time is that very few people have a good idea of what they have become. I cannot improve or reinvent a process or personality of which I am not aware of its strength and limitations. Self-awareness in this regard, very, very key. I am a junkie of self-improvement. The world is changing too rapidly for me not to sustain a process to help upgrade my knowledge base and skill level consistently. But I know I can never and I cannot do this effectively until I am aware of myself. Increasingly, as a matter of fact. Personally, one of the greatest tools I work with is self-awareness. To thyself be true, goes Shakespeare. I have been able to stop myself at critical times to acknowledge my foolishness and change course swiftly. I keep my conscience alive and responsive. Truly, this is one of my greatest strong points. But self-awareness deals with the enemy within. How do we tackle the enemy without? We must consider all the seeming limitation posed by the system. The fact that our educational systems are not up to standard. The fact that we must do business in the midst of epileptic power supply, no access to loans, bad roads, and more personal challenges like a poor background. Should these daunting realities place a lead on our potential and rein our imaginations? I think not. One feature of a guerrilla is the fact that the insurgent is not adequately armed. It doesn't have as much supplies as a regular army, which is funded by the system. But the uniqueness of the guerrilla lies in its ability to surmount this reality, to use available resources to upset business as usual and foster change. How did a few students fighting with less ammunition than the formal army overthrow Batista in Cuba? George Washington and the rest of the American insurgents were not as equipped as the British Redcoats, but they had a greater force the incumbent did not possess. Too many of us, I fear, are being stopped in our tracks by the inadequacies of the system. Let me tell you a little bit about usurping the system. People find it amazing to learn that the STN group was officially started in a 3-bedroom apartment where I stayed with my wife. All we had, it appeared, was a few hundreds of naira and 2 staff. But we had much more than that. We had the vision of an eagle and the doggedness of a pit bull. We knew what we wanted and we were stubborn enough to pursue it. From this 3-bedroom apartment, we handled million naira briefs. We branded our company not by what we saw in the actual, but by who we truly were in the potential. Our letterheads were world class, and so were our envelopes. Our website made bold statements, and we were willing to stretch ourselves to deliver content every time a demand was placed on us to do so. We had a slogan for our internal operations and guidance. We were a small company with the spirit of a large company. From the very beginning, I made up my mind I wasn't going to run a sole proprietorship. So kickoff, I set out to build structures. I sold equity and instituted a board consisting of people with the relevant reputation capital to drive the business. In consultation with a few experts, I drafted a corporate governance policy. I took out time to understudy the world's greatest corporations and determined I was going to build one under God's grace, right here from Third World Africa. We made originality a to-die-for commitment. We set bold, audacious goals that made mockers scorn and visionaries glow in admiration. It was only a matter of time before the world would acknowledge us. Only a matter of time, I tell you. From that 3-bedroom apartment, we moved to the top floor of a 4-story office building in Ikeja. From there, we moved on to our own duplex on Adeniyi Jones with some of the most beautiful aesthetics and a 30-man staff. We have never at any point in our corporate advancement had all the resources we needed. We have lived and built on the edge. As we position to face the world, it is of utmost importance we understand some foundational guerrilla truths. First of all, there can be no surviving the times if we do not build formidable structures. And I'll say that again. There can be no surviving the times if we do not build formidable structures. Life for the third world man at this point in history must be a deliberate attempt to force an impression. Too many of us are living structureless lives with no deliberately created systems and processes to guide our course. Think of your life in terms of a corporation. What are your core competencies? What unique value do you add to the world? How much do you spend on your personal branding and positioning? You can't live your life like everyone else. What's your personal governance policy? How do you make decisions? What key products or services will you evolve from you as a person within the next 1 year? And what are your budgetary allocations for them? Only very few of us have personal structures formidable enough to position us for global relevance. I did a little study and I realized that scarcely any of our nation's most notable businessmen, politicians, or key personalities had a personal website, a biography, or a book to show for their existence. One of the nation's foremost lawyers died without a will or a book to his credit. Almost every American president has a book out there. Almost every successful story is documented in a book somewhere in America. We have the tendencies to be very small-minded in our thinking. We do not think in terms of legacy. A culture of longevity is simply not a part of our commitment. That is why we scarcely leave any trace when we are dead and gone. Very few Nigerian companies ever outlive their founders. And the reason is because credible structures were not put in place to ensure longevity. So why don't you begin to build structures to position yourself? Why don't you design and host your own personal website and begin to share your thoughts with the world? I must say again, succession planning is critical for the credibility and the longevity of our visionary commitments. Now, once the mind can grasp and accept it, the will can make it happen against all odds. The very fact that the insurgent is outnumbered and out-resourced compels him to meticulously organize and script his victory plan. At this time in our history as a people, we cannot afford to leave our survival to chance. The world is closing in on us. The only way to play in the near future will be global. God help us if we are ill prepared. Preparation and planning is key for our survival. Every move must be calculated. Every resource, time, money, energy must be rightly deployed. The urgency of the situation demands we live a scripted life. Where will you be by this time in 10 years? There must be a credible balance between fun times and serious exchange. If we leave this to our nature, then the tendency is we will tilt overtly towards leisure and fun times, like too many of us are already doing. Our counterparts in the rest of the world are not resting on their oars. The Japanese have 100-year goals. The typical Japanese student goes to school 240 days a year, while the average African youngster goes 180 days or less, and is exposed to a much less rigorous curriculum. 96% of the Japanese students arrive at their first job having earned a school diploma, which is the equivalent of a 4-year degree of a Nigerian university. Japan currently has the best qualified workforce in the world. Is it any wonder then that Japan, with almost no natural resource, has become an economic miracle? Do you know that the only natural thing in Singapore is the people of Singapore? Singapore has recycled sewage water into drinking water. It's amazing. It is imperative we decide what we want and build bridges towards them. From the very first day I started a consulting firm, I knew what I wanted and where exactly I wanted to take it. And this is how I wage war through life. I understand very well the odds against me, and so I waste no time in drawing out my plans. This is one of the most critical guerrilla truths we can hold on to. However, the whole notion of building structures is founded upon the commitment to pursue a cause greater than self. This is critical. Every successful guerrilla campaign has resulted from people who had goals larger than themselves. This is why at this time we have practically no Nigerian company, but for one or two able to compete favorably globally, though we are getting there, I believe. Most of the vision and mission statements are mere rhetoric composed to disguise the vigorous profit motive of the founders. Guerrilla tactics can only be employed by true visionaries. It takes long-range vision and a commitment to a cause to abandon the security of the present in pursuit of a vision that could very well be a mirage. One of the most successful insurgencies of modern times was carried out by Bill Gates. Really, how many of us will have left the security of Harvard in all its prestige in pursuit of an intangible reality? Not too many, I guess. And that is why not too many can be Bill Gates. Not too many people could summon up the nerve to jettison a fledgling law practice to take up the cause of a people against a system so strong like the apartheid regime. And not too many people can be a Nelson Mandela. Too many of us have trained to seek comfort, to seek security and convenience. This was the motivation behind our course of study. This was the motivation of our choice of jobs and line of business. Too many of us are ruled by our bellies and spurred on only by our appetites. That is why hundreds of graduates are sacrificing the value of their dreams on the altar of comfort and financial security and heading for the banks, oil and gas, and telecommunication firms. We love our comfort zones too dearly. This is what I fear the most. It is rare to find any Nigerian who is really ready to lay it all down for something bigger than him. We can never be truly happy living for ourselves and dwelling within our comfort zone. Every true revolutionary understands that true joy and fulfillment is an inner experience. Inner joy is greater than comfort and more sublime than pleasure. We have too many small-minded people pursuing small-minded endeavors. We cannot go very far this way. If we are ever going to surmount the odds stacked up against us, then we must be willing to take calculated risks towards achievable, noble endeavors. This has been one of the key tactics I have employed in navigating my way through the murky waters of life in the third world. On July 4th, 1776, in the heart of Philadelphia, 56 men took a decision that will forever change the course of history. This was no ordinary decision. They converged before the most beautifully written and historically documented of all times, the Declaration of Independence. Signing it will be signing their death warrant. Signing it will launch the most powerful nation on the earth. Well, signing they did. These 56 men forever changed the course of history by taking one of the most monumental risks ever. The insurgents did not in any way measure to the British in military might, but they knew a decision had to be made. They were dead already as far as they were concerned, and as far as living was concerned. They were willing to trade the present for the possibility the future promised. Of course, they had no illusions about the fact that their decision was going to produce casualties if it ever ended up successful in the first place. But there can be no victory worth savoring without casualties, since the possibility of failure is the relevance of victory. The great American nation has continued to march on, drawing inspiration from the courage of these men. This is the spirit that will ensure we survive these times. If we will survive, then we must be willing to take risk. Every year, I take a trip to Ikenne, my hometown in Ogun State, to ask myself 15 questions. Most critical amongst the questions I must answer is this: what major risks am I going to take in the year ahead of me? Some of my most profound breakthroughs have resulted from risk with the potential to embarrass me terribly. As we proceed in these complex times of ours, we cannot afford to hole up in caves like Saul and the rest of the Israelites while the Philistines had a field day. We must be able to venture out like Jonathan did. Perhaps God will give us the victory. Life acknowledges the summation of Theodore Roosevelt, and I quote, "It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds must have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but who actually strives to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasm, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat." End of quote. Endangered species have no other alternative but to dare. So what would you dare? Would every move you make be spurred on by available resources, or will you determine to force your relevance with or without adequate resources? The spirit that will win in these times is that which possesses such a quality, which believes so strongly in an idea that it risks the security of the present for the reward of the future. Looking at my life, short as it is at this time, you may be shocked by how many crazy risks I have taken, and how often and strangely I have made some of my best moves, not as much through thorough strategic planning as by trials and error. This has become a model which has affected every sphere of my existence, including business. I have riskily stumbled into ideas, into theories, philosophies, products, and services. I also know that I wouldn't have stumbled if I wasn't moving. And I also know I wouldn't have been moving if I was never ready to take risks. Let's keep moving as students and as professionals in a preferred and necessary direction especially. Maybe we'll keep stumbling and somehow stumble into key ideas. If we stumble into failure and embarrassment, then let's keep moving, and soon even failure will become a crucial tool. Let's keep risking, calculatedly moving, and let's keep stumbling. Listen to me, friends. Intelligence is a key success factor in guerrilla warfare. You must be able to gather and deploy data effectively. Relevance and irrelevance, survival and extinction in the 21st century are all dependent on this crucial skill. The ability to engage technology for maximal productivity is a key skill we must develop to survive in these times. However, technology does not have mainstream accessibility in our system. If anything, it is treated as a luxury and not a tool of performance. The internet in all its vast potential is simply a tool to send and receive mails, chat on the messenger, and carry out advanced free schemes for the average youth. But you cannot afford to stop there. Average Japanese or American teenagers and 20-something-year-old are inventing and finding out crazy ways to maximize technology. The CEO of Facebook is a 24-year-old, for heaven's sake. Silicon Valley is riddled with geeks and eggheads, youths who are fast leaving their counterparts in Africa and the rest of the so-called third world in a cloud of smoke. So what are you going to do? Honestly, that's my question for you. You must take up the challenge to acquaint yourself with modern technology and seek creative ways to use them in creating solutions to human problems. If you are crazy enough, you might as well go ahead and pioneer the next big widget. And before your imaginations run too wild, why not begin from your phone? What new ways can you use that little gadget to do to be more productive? You find people who have all sorts of fancy applications on their phone and yet can't keep an appointment or organize their day. People have been using camera phone, taking pictures every day. Nobody has ever downloaded those pictures. At times you wonder why we keep those phones. What new ways are you going to use the internet? The world would consistently give its due to anyone under the sun who is able to use existing technology in refreshingly new ways and create new technology. In the late 1950s, Xerox commenced basic research on its first commercial copying machine, the 914. Cash-strapped and unwilling to abandon the project, the company offered its patent to IBM, who in turn got Arthur D. Little, a consulting firm, to do the market research study. Arthur D. Little, after extensive research, concluded that even if the revolutionary machine captured 100% of the market for carbon paper, lithograph, and hectograph, it still will be unable to pay back the investment required to get into the copier business. ADL went ahead to offer its clients IBM some professional advice: stay out of copiers. And so IBM turned down the patents. Employing the perseverance that comes from knowing you have a great idea, Xerox copier refused to give up. It strongly believed its newly developed technology could take carbon paper and other existing copying technologies a step further. The determination turned out not to have been unfounded. Upon the emergence of the 914, people realized that their work groups did not have to pass around one single document in a meeting. The invention of the xenography made it possible for that one single document to be copied and served to as many people as needed it, inexpensively. This was the genesis of photocopying as we know it today. Now, this is the moral of the story. The great IBM was completely blinded to the power inherent in xenography and blinded more than anything by its already prevailing capacity. The truth lies in the fact that every existing technology has the potential to make us more effective than we can dream of today. Funny, isn't it? But do you know that Thomas Edison once considered the only use for his invention, the phonograph, was to record the last wishes of dying men? Take that. The inventors and users of the mainframe computer did not bother to go any further because as far as they could see, the mainframe computer was already solving all their problems. Now compare that fact with the advent of the personal computer, all the new applications open to its users, and all the problems it enables today's company, businessmen, and workers to solve. Today's personal computer has changed the way we live, has changed the way we think, has changed the way we work, has changed the way we love, has changed the way we war, has changed our life completely. Modern day technology has much more potential than we are yet to discover. This fact demands that we develop an altogether new paradigm with respect to technology and its applications. Consider all the prevailing problems around you as a student or worker. How can you decrease product development cycle, reduce distribution cost, create customer experiences, and how best technology could be applied to alleviate or completely eradicate them? By this, we develop not only the capacity to leverage innovatively on existing technology, but also preempt new technology and be in the forefront of revolutionary applications. We must constantly be looking forward for what is new on the horizon, and most times we gain a lot of insight on what lies ahead by critically screening and appraising our current working systems. Technology and work tools must be used to free ourselves from routine, repetitive tasks for greater output. We are already witnessing the death of life, the death of business and work as we know it. What is emerging is what we are creating. Those who become part of that creative process today will lead the future. It demands critical paradigms that are lethally poised to spot opportunities in existing problems and to apply existing solutions to yet to be discovered problems. Operating in this vein will no doubt make you a very critical asset and a survivor of these times. It will play a crucial role in determining those who survive and those who don't. This requires not just putting pieces of gist and meat together. It is more of creating a culture of fact-finding characterized by my acronym MOD, Modernization, Originality, Development. An individual, nation, or company that places little or no premium on research and development is actually primitive and definitely not globally compliant. Can I ask you a question? What is your own personal R&D budget? Thinking and working like this helps you stay prepared with just-in-time response methodologies to rise above and take advantage of the intricacies of an increasingly unpredictable world, also to stay ahead of the competition, and in the long run to create a platform for an industry leader status. Now, no gorilla can possibly hope to survive on his own. Experienced guerrillas understand the importance of building alliances with people who are equally sick and tired of the way things are. Think about it. Fidel Castro needed Raul and Che Guevara as much as they needed him. Mandela needed Oliver Tambo and Walter Sisulu as much as they needed him. And even Bill Gates needed Paul Allen and Steve Ballmer, all dropouts at different times, as much as they did him. To survive these times, guerrilla tactics demands you form critical alliances with like-minded people who are not just drifting along confused by pleasure, entertainment and comfort and sports, but visionaries who understand the times and are willing to supply the sacrifice needed to launch us into global relevance. I cannot say for certain how far I will have come without the support and alliance of key comrades. There were days we sat down drinking Gari and Epa and calling it cornflakes and chicken. These were days we suffered serious embarrassment from bus conductors because we could not afford to pay our fares. We started out together collecting refuse, then fumigating, and then each step of the way, we knew exactly what we wanted and where we were going. We were failures who got angry, failures that snapped out of the hypnotism of our predicaments as Africans. We realized we were endangered and vowed to survive and beat our portion out of life. Yes, we were soldiers, and we still stand side by side, marching on. You must forge alliances, friend. We must build a network of insurgents who will take Africa to its true heights. Renaissance men who will be willing to compete on the frontiers and serve the cause of humanity at the very risk of their own lives and convenience. We must build alliances vertically and horizontally, with pairs and downlines and with mentors as well. There will always be opportunities for you to network with people that matter. Take out time to attend seminars that will have other like-minded people in attendance. And when there, don't just sit down, don't just listen and head on home. Make critical connections. Exchange complimentary cards. Let people know what you do and show them you are interested in what they do too. Some of these people attend your church, strike up relationships. Some live in the same building you do. You never know when you might need their input. Now, there are opportunities you seize and there are opportunities you create. Create your own networking opportunity. Invite some colleagues over for a little get-together and urge them to bring their friends who are also in league. Every man will be as relevant and as wealthy as his or her personal network. The quality of a man's personal peace, as well as the size of a man's pocket, is proportional to the quality of his personal network. So build key networks. A number of individuals write business columns in national dailies and professional journals. Why not open correspondence with them? Send them a letter. Write them. Do something. Reach beyond you to orchestrate a meeting. I teach a concept called the power of top, where top means the other person. And this is how it works. Every person has an area of influence and an area of interest. Your area of influence is that area which you have control over, or better put, that area you have something of worth to give or share. Your area of interest, on the other hand, is your area of need. Now, applying it to making critical connections vertically, there are certain people we all know who hold key positions in certain industries. We read about them in the papers, and sometimes they are featured in national dailies with their names, companies, and designations. Using the principle of the power of top, collect the names and designations of people that matter, which you come across in newspapers, in journals, in materials. Each of these people, just like you also, have an area of interest and an area of influence. They have areas in their lives they have control over and have something valuable to give, and that is their area of influence. And areas in their lives where they have needs, that is their area of interest. What you now need to do after identifying your prospect is to determine how to connect your area of influence with their area of interest to provoke a release from their area of influence to your area of interest. One area of interest many high-end professionals like the one you are trying to make a critical connection with have is the need to be acknowledged for their contributions, and they need to share their experience through mentoring, because for most of these people, they desire self-actualization more than the basic needs of food, clothing, and shelter. Your own area of interest is that you need to build critical connections and foster meaningful relationships that will bolster your career. So, what do you need to do? You need to connect your area of influence to their area of interest. What is within your area of influence that could best serve their area of interest? You have, for example, the ability to write. So you could write letters of encouragement, telling them how much you appreciate their works and their contributions to business and life in general. Go down to specific. Highlight things you have heard them talk about and projects they have been involved in. Mean it. no flattering. Send this letter by courier and wait for a response. If you don't send it by courier, the secretary may open it and may never get to the subject. Send this letter and wait for a response. If you do not get one, write again. Write and send a gift along. Nothing elaborate, maybe a tie, maybe a shirt, a packet of handkerchief, a handbag if she's a woman. Keep writing until you get a response. If you do not get a response, write and seek audience with them. In every case I have seen the power of TOP in operation, the result is always the same. The area of influence of the person seeking to make the connection, that is their ability to write in this case, connects to the area of interest of the person being reached out to, which is their desire to see that their works and accomplishments are making a difference and are actually appreciated, and their desire to have someone they can pour their wealth of knowledge and experience into. This provokes a release from their area of influence, their experience and pedigree to your own area of interest. They need to build a relationship with them. This works all the time, and it is not manipulative like some think. It is a deliberate effort to make the critical connection, recognizing the needs and the power of the other person. Guerrillas make it a key priority to seek foreign aid. In this sense, you might want to create a personal website or your blog in order to create a platform for interaction and possible collaborations with potential comrades abroad. These are great times we live in, friends, and they are equally as dangerous. In a jungle, there are no rules, just prey, predator, and a level playing field. I believe the economic and social renaissance we seek lies in the bosom of this generation. So we must brace up to this responsibility. It is critical at this point we begin to cultivate national and global awareness, because truly, how secure can you be when you are surrounded by insecurity and poverty? We must take responsibility for the state of our own individual development and also that of the nation. I do not make my sermons to the majority, I make them to the few who in every nation and space take responsibility for the direction in which the majority must go. I believe you are one of them. I believe these words will not only excite you, I hope they will incite you to an insurgency, not against the political system, but against the mindsets and the attitudes that have held us bound for too long. The time to win and win on a global scale is now. I like the way Emerson puts it. If we are related, we shall meet. I believe we are, and I'm glad to have met you on this material. Let us go forth and lead.
Truly, you can have it all. You are amazingly unstoppable until you think otherwise. We have finally come to the end of this CD. Thank you for purchasing this material. Most importantly, for investing the listening time. However, the efforts may lead to what we call labor loss if more efforts will not be invested into identifying and taking critical actions in an intentional commitment to see the results. This really is our critical production goal in life today. For more information on our products, training programs and services, please visit our website on www.lifetoday.net or call 234-806-1660-945 or 234-802-2409-800. You can also send us an email on info@lifetoday.net or products@lifetoday.net or programs@lifetoday.net. Thank you.